Right now, postal services worldwide are halting shipments to the United States.
An executive order signed by President Trump last month, goods coming in from abroad less than $800 will be slapped with country-specific tariff rates starting Friday.
It started with a single executive order. President Donald Trump abolished the de minimis exemption, the rule that had allowed parcels worth under $800 to enter the United States duty-free. By Friday, that exemption was gone. The impact was immediate. Postal services in Australia, India, New Zealand, the United Kingdom, and across Europe suspended shipments to the United States, and the shock was felt in North America as well.
Now, as if Donald Trump's tariffs aren't inflicting enough pain, now Canadians running a small business are bracing for higher costs as the U.S. ends the exclusion from shipping fees.
Canada, America's closest trading partner, saw small businesses scrambling to keep sales flowing south of the border. Millions of parcels cross between the two countries each year, and the removal of this rule struck at the core of cross-border commerce. What was meant to protect America was in fact disrupting the continent's own supply chains.
The White House said the change was needed to protect American industries and block dangerous goods like fentanyl. But the first and hardest blow fell on American consumers and retailers.
The vast majority of my customer base is in the US. I can't pass this on to my customers. So as of last night, I've had to close my store completely.
Online sellers who rely on imports suddenly faced suspended shipments. Small shops that stocked foreign products prepared to raise prices or close their doors. For households, the costs arrive almost overnight. New duties are tied to country-specific rates ranging from 10 to 50%. NBC News reported they translate into flat fees of about $80 per item for countries with lower rates, $160 for mid-range, and $200 for the highest brackets. Analysts warned these changes could add up to $13 billion in extra consumer costs. Logistics firms also pulled back. DHL, one of the world's largest couriers, said it would stop accepting parcels bound for the United States until key details were clarified. Instead of securing America, the policy created delays, higher prices, and confusion at home.
While many countries froze shipments altogether, Canada chose a different approach. Canada Post confirmed it would not suspend service. Instead, it introduced a system to collect the new duties and transfer them to U.S. Customs. For Canadian parcels, most are now subject to a 35% tariff, reflecting the non-CUSMA rate set earlier in August. It is costly, but it preserves access to the market. This stood in sharp contrast with other partners. In Australia, small exporters halted sales to the United States because they could not guarantee what fees customers would face. In Europe, postal agencies admitted they needed more time and paused deliveries until new systems were built. Canada, by contrast, kept goods flowing. In the face of Trump's abrupt policy, Ottawa ensured businesses still had a path into their largest export destination. The contrast is clear. Trump's decision was supposed to protect the United States, but it left American families and small shops paying more while major couriers suspended service. Canada, facing the same disruption, adapted quickly. By maintaining its postal link, it preserved market share while competitors in Europe and Asia were locked out. This is more than a technical fix. It reinforces Canada's role as a stable partner in North America. Prime Minister Mark Carney has argued that Canada will only sign agreements that serve its interests. That stance is reflected here. While others cut connections, Canada proved it could keep commerce moving under new rules. For the United States, the question is whether these tariffs strengthen or weaken the economy they were meant to defend. For Canada, the lesson is sharper. In the midst of global confusion, it found a way to turn crisis into opportunity, showing that resilience and pragmatism can be its greatest advantage.
President Trump hit Brazil with a 50% tariff, the steepest against any nation. Trump's politically charged tariff on the U.S.'s largest supplier of coffee.
This is something to definitely pay attention to. Because it will mean higher coffee prices.
Morning routines in America often begin with something simple, a hot cup of coffee. For many families, that first sip is more than caffeine. It is a ritual that sets the tone for the day. But even that small comfort is no longer immune from politics. After President Trump imposed a 50% tariff on Brazil, the world's largest coffee exporter, prices began to climb sharply. A pound of ground coffee that cost $6 last year now sells for about $8. For importers, invoices that once totaled $10,000 now arrive at $15,000. Small cafes say the extra cost could decide whether they survive. This is not an abstract policy debate in Washington. It is a daily expense that lands on the checkout receipt of millions of households. What was meant to punish a foreign country is making mornings more expensive in the United States. Coffee is only one product. When tariffs spread across metals, food, and manufactured goods, the impact becomes unavoidable.
Watch, the U.S. economy has a case of foodflation.
Coffee up nearly 15%, ground beef up just over 11%. Egg prices hit by avian flu are falling, but still up more than 16%.
There's no doubt Americans are paying the tariffs at this point.
The Bureau of Labor Statistics reports that wholesale prices for fresh vegetables surged at a record pace in July. Overall grocery costs are up 2.2% compared with last year. Coffee is nearly 15% higher, ground beef more than 11%, and eggs remain 16% above last year's level. Aluminum and steel tariffs, introduced in March, now show up in canned goods, beverages, and food processing costs. Wholesale inflation climbed 0.9% from June to July, the sharpest monthly increase since June 2022. Economists had expected only a modest rise, but tariffs have sped up the pressure. At first, large retailers absorbed part of the burden, but that cushion is gone. With supply tightening and costs rising, families face fewer choices and thinner budgets. If grocery bills show the hidden tax of tariffs, tourism shows how those policies ripple through entire communities. Canada remains one of America's closest economic partners, yet relations changed on August 1 when Trump raised tariffs on Canadian goods outside USMCA to 35%. In response, Canada has turned to diversify exports toward Europe and strengthen cooperation with Mexico.
What happens in Vegas could spell trouble for the U.S. economy. Empty streets and casinos.
It's slow. When I drive down the strip going to work in the morning and I barely see visitors out there.
The tariffs were meant to squeeze Ottawa, but they are already hitting American communities. Tourism shows the clearest effect. According to the Las Vegas Convention and Visitors Authority, total visitors in June fell more than 11% compared with a year ago.
President Trump's tariff announcements angering potential visitors like Canadians.
Used to we have like lot for Canadian, and now no.
Flights from Canada dropped over 18%. Hotels, casinos, and convention halls counted tens of thousands fewer guests. In a city where a quarter of workers depend on tourism, the absence of Canadian visitors translates into real losses for restaurants, entertainment, and local businesses. What was designed to extract concessions abroad is instead draining revenue from America's own economy.
A vote for Trump means your groceries will be cheaper.
Trump promised tariffs would put America first. In reality, they are circling back onto American households and businesses. Coffee is pricier, grocery bills are heavier, and tourism is weaker. The weight falls inside the United States, where families and local economies bear the cost. Canada, meanwhile, is not yielding. It is adapting, finding new markets and holding leverage. This contrast shows tariffs are not forcing neighbors into quick concessions. Instead, they are exposing America's own vulnerabilities. The story of tariffs is not written in speeches, but in daily life. It is printed on grocery receipts, in tighter budgets, and in the empty hotel rooms of Las Vegas. What was billed as a show of strength abroad has become a bill handed to the American people.
35% tariff is now in place on some Canadian goods. And one Canadian industry that Washington has taken particular issue with is dairy.
In early August 2025, President Donald Trump took another step in his aggressive trade strategy. He raised tariffs on Canadian non-USMCA goods from 25% to 35%, escalating tensions at the border. Although the dairy sector itself is not directly hit by these new tariffs, Canada's dairy supply management system has long been a thorn in Trump's side. For years, he has portrayed it as an unfair barrier that protects Canadian farmers while limiting U.S. access to the market. Now, with broader tariffs in place and trade talks under strain, the question is whether Trump can force change in a policy Canada has vowed to defend at all costs.
Supply management is designed to protect dairy farms. There are limits to how much Canadian dairy farms can produce and how much from the United States can be imported to Canada.
Canada's supply management controls how much dairy is produced domestically and how much foreign product can enter the market. Imports from the U.S. are capped at roughly 3.5% of Canada's dairy market. If that limit is exceeded, tariffs skyrocket, 241% on milk and nearly 298.5% on butter, according to the Canadian Border Services Agency. The system has been in place for over 6 decades, designed to keep prices stable and protect thousands of family-run farms from being outcompeted by massive U.S. operations that can house tens of thousands of cows.
The dairy industry falls under CUSMA regulations, but U.S. President Donald Trump has repeatedly complained, saying it's an unfair deal for his country's producers.
From Washington's perspective, this is the very definition of a trade barrier. American producers already send about $800 million worth of dairy products to Canada annually, while Canada exports roughly $300 million in dairy south of the border. To Trump and his allies, the limits, and the high tariffs beyond them, mean lost opportunities for U.S. farmers. Just weeks before these latest tariff increases, Canada's parliament passed legislation that forbids using supply management as a bargaining chip in future trade negotiations. The bill enjoyed cross-party support, with advocates pointing to past trade deals where portions of the market were conceded despite political promises to protect it. Now, any government that wants to change the system would have to repeal the law and pay a steep political price. This protection isn't just about Quebec, the heartland of Canadian dairy. Farmers in British Columbia, Alberta, and even the Northwest Territories see supply management as essential for economic stability. It's a rare national consensus in an often divided political landscape. Canadian officials, including Prime Minister Mark Carney, know what's at stake. Loosening supply management too far could allow foreign dairy to take up to 18% of the domestic market, a level that industry groups warn would undermine the system entirely. That could mean farm closures, job losses, and declining rural economies. Beyond defending dairy, Canada has leverage of its own. The U.S. relies heavily on Canadian energy, critical minerals, and integrated auto supply chains. These sectors give Ottawa bargaining power that extends far beyond milk and butter. In trade talks, it's not just about defending one industry. It's about maintaining a balanced, mutually beneficial agreement. Trump may have expected the same playbook to work here as it has elsewhere: apply tariffs, demand changes, and secure a quick win. Instead, Canada's legal safeguards and political unity have slowed the process to a crawl. The dairy sector remains protected, with Ottawa signaling it is ready to walk away from a bad deal rather than concede on supply management. Meanwhile, U.S. dairy producers still face oversupply, volatile prices, and stiff competition abroad. Higher tariffs on other Canadian goods risk hurting American importers more than they help U.S. farmers, a reminder that not every bluff works in Washington's favor.